Hello everyone. Today we're going to be looking at the process of changing the spring in a gun with a quick change spring guide. The gun we're looking at today is a Krytac SPR. The first step of this process is a pretty simple one. It's to separate the upper and lower receivers. This is done by popping out the front body pin, sliding the upper off the lower receiver. Once you have the upper off, you can set it aside as we will not need it for the rest of the process. The next step is to remove the stock. This will vary gun to gun, but the concept is the same. Remove the rear plate and pull down the locking tab to take the stock off of the buffer tube. Once you have the stock off, the buffer tube needs to be removed. This is a simple process. There is a screw at the end of the buffer tube holding it into the gearbox. Simply unscrew it and pull the buffer tube off. Next, we are going to take off the motor grip. The first step in this process is to remove the two screws on the motor plate as shown. After the plate is off, you will need to disconnect the motor wires. This is a simple task, but be gentle while doing so. A flathead screwdriver or pliers are the best way to do this. Once you have the motor out, we can focus on removing the grip. There are two screws as shown. Simply unscrew them and lift up the grip. Be cautious to guide the wires out of the grip properly. The magazine catch needs to be removed next. Just one screw and it all comes out. Be sure to keep track of where everything goes so you don't lose anything and you know what you're doing for reassembly. The central body pin is next. This one can be tough and very stiff in the receiver. Do not be afraid to use force, but the pin only goes out one way. One side of the pin has knurling, or small grooves that cannot be pushed through the receiver. So be sure you're pushing out the proper way to not damage your gun. The next and final step of disassembly is to remove the rear body pin. It just needs to be punched out. If this is your first time removing it, it can be very stiff, so do not be afraid to use some force. The next step is for Krytacs only, or any gun that uses an ambi selector. You will need to remove the ambi selector on the right side of the gun. This is done by just one screw, and then it'll pop right out. Once you have completed all the previous steps, the gearbox should be free from the lower receiver. Use caution to make sure the wires are not being snagged, but it should come right out. Now it is time to actually change the spring. There is an Allen key on the back of the gearbox. Find the proper size Allen and push in and turn to release the current spring. Now change out the old spring for the new. Reinsert it the same way, pushing in and turning. Once completed, make sure the spring guide is flush with the rear of the receiver. Now that we have the new spring in the gearbox, we can reassemble. The process is the same as disassembly, but in reverse. The process is going to be sped up here for time's sake, but the steps performed are listed at the top of the screen. Quick tip when reinserting the motor. The red tab on the motor goes towards the trigger and faces down the gun. Also, when putting the motor back in, make sure it is springy as shown. This makes sure it is functioning properly. If it is not springy, the gun has a chance not to function. Just like that, you have successfully changed the spring in your gun. We hope you enjoyed the video, and if you liked the video, comment below and tell us which tech tutorial we should do next.